Hi, good morning. Welcome to Women's History Month activity at BMCC. Today is Friday, March 11th, and we're going to be having a discussion today on the role of culture on women's leadership. And this is one of the program or events that as part of the committee, Women's History Month committee at BMCC, working alongside with the Women's Resource Center, the main sponsor, and also the Center for Ethnicity and Race Studies at BMCC. I'm glad to be hosting this event, and I welcome all of you. In celebration of Women's HERStory Month of activities at BMCC, I'll be having a discussion and also a question and answer session on the role of culture on women's leadership. And throughout this program, which is, it's not actually a formal event, we'll be sharing excerpts from my publication on the role of culture on the leadership styles of women in leadership positions. And we'll be exploring and discussing societal gender roles, expectations, and norms from diverse societal perspectives, including a cross-cultural perspective on the narrative of a woman just like me. And as many of you know, the theme for the Women HERStory Month at BMCC, Borough of Manhattan Community College, is a woman just like me, and making women visible in all spheres. So I would like to welcome you again, and I thank you for joining us. Before we continue, there's a link in the chat room. Please fill it for attendance. And for those of you seeking the co-curricular extra credit, I have this event today and also next Friday, March 18th. I'm going to be having another event, and I'll have a panel discussion with, mental health professionals from all walks of life that will be attending, will be presenting. So if you're interested in your two events, this event for today definitely will give you the co-curricular transcript credit. And also, if you attend next week's event, you'll also be able to receive the co-curricular transcript credit. If you would like to find out more what that is, feel free to see the BMCC website and type in CCT credit, all right? If you would like to also find out more of what's going on during the Women HERStory Month at BMCC, you can type in bmcc.cuny.edu and check out the Women's Resource Center. All the events and activities will be listed there. So what we're going to do today, it's like I mentioned, it's not a formal event. It's supposed to be a discussion where everyone chimes in terms of, how women are treated or expectations of, the role of women around the world based on culture, based on, societal expectations, and also to see if they've changed somewhat from one generation to the other, if they're the same, if things have improved, and whatnot. So what I would first like to do, for those of you who are in my classes, make sure you take some notes, or if you would like, I can also post the recording so that you can watch it over, because for your other extra credit you'll be getting in class, besides the CCT, if you're a BMCC student, I'm also offering you extra credit for attending and writing a short summary. All right. So I know for other students from other professors, you're going to write a short reflection also. So what I would like to start with is, to start from this publication, which I wrote about 5 years ago. And given that this is Women History Month, I decided that I would share with you on the role of culture on women's leadership, as from my research that I conducted on Nigerian women. So I'm going to start this as an intro, and then we can get into the discussion of, women around the world, or women and culture, and to see if there's any correlation in the Nigerian women's story and stories of women from around the world. So the second chapter of this publication, Generation X, the role of culture on the leadership styles of women in leadership positions. I provided a historical perspective on women and leadership in Nigeria. This chapter identifies in brief the chronological and historical factors relating to the leadership of women in Nigeria from the pre-colonial, post-colonial, and present-day Nigeria. The historical and chronological differences in leadership and perspectives of Nigerian women during these periods, as well as the demographic and leadership characteristics that may have contributed to the growth or decline of women's leadership, were discussed. So now let's look at women in pre-colonial Nigeria. Women in pre-colonial Nigeria, depending on which ethnic group they belong to, had prescribed and assigned roles within the Nigerian society. And before colonization, of course, there was nothing called Nigeria. So depending on the part of what is now Nigeria, whatever society or ethnic group or communities they belong to, had prescribed and assigned roles. And these assigned or prescribed roles made many women groups in pre-colonial Nigeria sometimes, able to form women's groups, sometimes able to form support groups that assisted in the society with leadership roles, especially within, the community, their immediate community. Before the year 1900, the dynamics of culture and the influence of women's ability to occupy leadership positions using different forms of power tactics varied from one society to another. In southern Nigeria, for instance, there were no formal, separate, and explicit political institutions and roles. Historically, women occupied many ranks and commanded various roles within the palace and community administrations. The Igala tradition of the Middle Belt region of northern Nigeria served to prove the ranking of women without boundaries to gender, but much acknowledgement of a person's capacity to perform. History holds that a woman named Ebele Ejaunu founded the Igala kingdom. So in that society, women were not prescribed or assigned any roles, but your ability to perform, which means they worked alongside men. And if you're able to perform as men, then you're capable of leading. But in other communities, it was different. The society prescribed roles that women would stay home, or they would do the farm work or take care of the children. In other societies, they could do anything that they wanted so far as they were able to also lead. So in another part of Nigeria, in the northern part, where was the home of the prominent women sovereigns and women of power, such as Queen Amina of Zaria in the 15th century, who extended her influence to the Nupe kingdom, built many cities in northern Nigeria, and was a skilled merchant, credited with introducing kola nuts to the region. Now we find in this section that, not only was this woman who became queen later, was able to build cities. This is something that in many communities, you find only men being able to build structures, cities to expand, and women would be subservient, staying behind. So this is very good that, many historical, books does not tell us that such events have taken place in Africa before colonization. It was looked as if Africa was like a jungle with, and in so many other places also that, women were not capable of thinking, they were not capable of leading, they were not capable of doing different, activities. But here we're hearing the stories of these ancient women. And of course, there are women in current day who have surpassed this also. And moving along, in other cities, culture and class dictated sex differentiation that resulted in women forming strong organizations Examples of such organizations were seen among the Igbo and Ibibio people of Southeast and Eastern Nigeria, respectively, where women were very much independent and had control of their day-to-day activities on the basis of their collective political and economic strength. In instances in which female political and economic organizations were lacking, such as among the Efik, Edo, Ishekiri, Ijo, and Kalabari ethnic groups in southern Nigeria, women of high status exercised political power as a collective representative of other women in the society through the office of the Queen Mother of Benin and through his or her personal relationships with male rulers. Pre-colonial African institutions were not formally designed to model European institutions, but to maximize on individual capabilities that were put to the service of an entire nation. The absence of European-style institutions did not declare the absence of order in pre-colonial Nigeria or in pre-colonial Africa for that matter, where humans were ranked according to the complementary skills for the survival of an entire nation. The leadership role of the pre-colonial African woman was valued as a necessary complementary factor rather than a subordinate position subservient to the men of that era. And this is in pre-colonial times. And now let us look at what this research says about colonial times. So women in colonial Nigeria, during the colonial era, many women groups' activities were suppressed. You see, there's a difference in pre-colonial Nigeria where women's roles were complementary to men, but in during colonial rule, the activities of women were suppressed. So we had colonial policies and structures that undermined the already existing cultures and societal groups. These policies eliminated many support structures that existed for women's groups. The colonial economy oriented in export, undermining the prestige of the traditional occupations of Nigerian women. Colonial policies and statutes were clearly sexist and biased against women occupying roles in leadership and economic positions. European colonialists stripped the Nigerian women of all leadership positions and power and debased the ranking of Nigerian women to fall below that of European men and women, European youths of all ages, and finally, Nigerian men of all status. And looking at the obvious efforts from European colonialists, Nigerian women remained persistent in the quest to exert and manipulate power. To exert and manipulate power. Women in Eastern Nigeria, beginning in 1929, resisted foreign invasion with the Aba women riots. They combined the struggle for independence with attempts to redress the socio-economic policies of the colonial administration by staging the Aba women's boycott. That was a collective political strategy to question colonial authorities on economic grounds and show the damaging impact of colonizers' socio-economic policies on women's lives. In Western Nigeria, for example, under the leadership of Mrs. Fumi Rasom Kuti, women questioned the character of the authoritarian government and the arbitrary nature of decision-making by colonial governments. The women were strategic in their approach and used power tactics, such as threatening to walk naked to the Oba's palace in Abeokuta. And Oba means king in Yoruba, which is located in the Yoruba kingdom, southwestern part of Nigeria today. This was a sign that traditionally women owned the power and authority of decision-making to question authorities in unfair social, political, and economic practices. So we see the difference in pre-colonial Nigeria, where women had rights and would threaten to walk around naked. It doesn't mean they want people to be looking at, their nakedness, but once women start walking around naked in groups, showing their dissatisfaction, the men or rulers know there's problem in that society because they do listen to the women. They value the women in pre-colonial Africa, and women were so powerful. I mean, who would not want to respect their own mother, right? So traditionally, you have to respect your mother. That is the place of, birth of everything. So without the woman, there was no male, right? So even during colonial rule, these women, even under colonial policies being kept down, they threatened that they were going to use the traditional means of rulership in walking around naked. If you don't give us what we want, we're going to just like go traditional on you. And, the men knew that they would be in trouble if that happened. Now, looking at women in post-colonial Nigeria, post-colonial Nigeria adopted numerous policies of the colonial era, which resulted in undermining and limiting the roles of women in leadership positions. Many of these biased policies significantly reduced women's social, economic, and political power, especially in the areas of leadership and decision-making. Nigerian women insisted on maintaining their pre-colonial status in post-colonial Nigeria. Women carried a systematic struggle to regain power, influence, and to maintain a voice in the relationship between the state and citizens, and a voice in the relationship among the people. The plight of Nigerian women for inclusion in the political, social, and economic affairs is still ongoing, even in 2022. There have been significant improvements regarding women and leadership. But for the purpose of this publication that, was part of my research a few years ago, women are still striving, even though there are a lot of international policies, like the Beijing Platform for Action or CEDAW, the Convention on Elimination of All Discrimination Against Women, and so many national policies that put women at the forefront, or even looking at the resolution by the United Nations 1325 on women, peace, and security, which says that, in every government, they should strive to have at least 50% of seats for women. And recently, the SDG number 5, the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, there are a lot of, targets that each country is supposed to follow, but some are doing much better than the other in terms of achieving gender parity. So for those of you just joining us, I just read chapter 2 from this publication, Generation X, the role of culture on the leadership styles of women in leadership position. And it was part of a research that I conducted a few years ago on the role of culture on women's leadership, to see if culture determined the leadership styles or how women today led in various organizations, or how women carried themselves around in different communities, or their capability to actually assume leadership roles or be able to exert power in various spheres. And I would like to open the floor up to anyone that would like to chime in on the section of chapter 2 of the publication that I read. If you found similar stories that relates to the theme of the BMCC Borough of Manhattan Community College Women HERStory Month of activities, and looking at the theme, A Woman Just Like Me. Did any of the information that I've just presented from this book resonate in terms of, your cultural expectations, roles that have been prescribed or assigned, or what you've observed in other communities, or some of your experiences? So I'd like to open the floor up for a discussion before we continue.
Well,
yes, Khalifa.
Yes, I would like to say that I honestly did not know that pre-colonial women anywhere in the world were respected. And that's brand new information for me, and I really appreciate it. And I wish this stuff was taught to me when I was younger. But yeah, learning about it now is really interesting, and I mean, I'm definitely gonna have to watch the video again to hear more. But when it comes to say my own culture, um, women are not respected in any of my communities, which is a Guyanese community and an Indian community. They they are they're beaten, they're raped constantly. You know, in India, women they can't even they don't even have the right to choose if they can wear a hijab right now. Their hijabs are being pulled off. You know, they're which is obviously very sexist because it's mostly men, and also of course there are also some women that unfortunately fall under that you know, anti-feminist kind of reaction. um yeah, so I mean, I wish I knew a way to help my community, but I don't know any ways to help them be more respected, honestly. I mean, I'm just one person, but I do hope, and my concentration right now is gender and women's studies, and this I feel is a really important subject. I would love to know more about women empowerment around the world, and to know how I can try to empower women within my community, whether it be Guyanese, Indian, LGBTQ community. um that's what I have to share at the moment.
Thank you so much, Khalifa. And you're a student at BMCC, right?
Yes.
Yes, that's good. So, you know, everywhere in most places around the world, or in many places around the world, even right here in the US, we have a high case of gender-based violence. And as you've mentioned, you know, a lot of atrocities, you know, committed against women every day. And this also escalated. I think it escalated during the COVID pandemic, where you know, women were mistreated even more because they could not work or go to school, and especially for young girls. I have some data here. Let me get that to you quickly. So last year, the UN Women brought out a fact sheet of activities that happened around the world because of the COVID pandemic, where, you know, during the lockdown. And, you know, it said at the current rate of progress, it would take another 130 years to reach gender equality at the highest level of power. And the reason why they said this was that the newly released data that they came out with, I believe last February or March, showed that progress to achieve gender equality in public life and decision making has been too low and very slow. Women make up 25% of parliamentarians globally, and only 3 countries have 50% of or more of women in parliament. Less than 1% of parliamentarians are women under the age of 30 years. Women make up only 13% of negotiators, 6% of mediators, and 6% of signatories in formal peace processes. In 2020, only 7.4% of Fortune 500 women were run by women. Just 22 countries in the world are headed by a woman. And if women are not in positions of power or in places where, you know, they can sign laws, they can undo laws and redo them, we're not going to have our voices heard, right? We'll just be talking every day. So this is one of the problems around the world, that because women have not been given the opportunity to work together or to effect change collaboratively, you know, with men, a lot of laws are still held against women. A lot of decision making are still being done by men. So we have Felicia Gangi. Do you mind to put on your camera so we can see you? You have
Okay,
the
I
floor.
will.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I found it
So
fascinating.
introduce yourself. You're
Hi.
also at BMCC, right?
Hello, yes.
Okay. Welcome.
Felicia. I found it fascinating. And also in Native American culture, they also respected the females and recognized that the females are the womb and the milk and the family, like they hold the families together. And I feel that in society that, I might sound feminist when I say this, but I feel that power and control is why females have been put to the back burner, you know, so to speak, because I feel like men are threatened by us women because we are so powerful and so strong. And, you know, like back in the day, they knew that we had control and power, and we knew how to put things together and hold the community together. And I feel like it's really great and amazing how Nigerians, especially the men, respected their women. It's awesome.
I think there's a correlation with the Native American community and traditional African societies. And if you look at Latin America, also in places where you find indigenous communities, there's a very good sign that, you know, women were respected. You know, women were the go-to people. But I think during all the other historical activities and policies that, you know, were, you know, shaping people's lives, all these traditional, you know, governance, traditional policies were, you know, done away with, you know, in the expectation or name of modern society. So whose modernity is it? Is it actually helping indigenous communities who have been displaced or reshaped from their
and I feel like
traditional way of life? Sorry?
No, I feel like, going off of what you said, with doing so, we really took away from all of everything, you know. We really ruined a lot of stuff by doing, like, as a whole, we ruined a lot of stuff, you know. That's how I feel. I don't know how to really explain it, but I feel like we ruined everything. People ruined everything, you know, communities, plants, everything.
Thank you so much, Felicia. And I see Hanifa. Hanifa, do you want to chime in? I see you posted something in the chat.
Hi, yeah, I can't turn on my webcam, but
okay, introduce yourself and let us hear your thoughts.
I'm Hanifa. I'm also a student at BMCC, and I was agreeing with Khalifa because it is true, but I kind of feel like it's overlooked and it's just passed off as culture. So it's like their role to keep everything in check. And like I was recently, like, I'm not sure if it was a film or a commercial regarding the divorce topic that I was talking about earlier. And in this case, the woman actually took action because her husband hit her and she went back home. And her family wasn't in support of her either. They just looked at her like, if all it was a slap, why are you making such a big deal out of it? And then even then she didn't listen. And she went to the police and they told her that she can't do anything about it. And instead, her husband is allowed by law to bring her back home because she wasn't at home. And he was upset, not because she left, but because when she left, the house was falling into pieces. He couldn't cook, he couldn't clean, and none of his clothes were getting cleaned. So he didn't see her as a person, but rather the things that she can do for him. So that's what
as
I thought.
An object.
That like once you take on like the motherly role, you're not a person anymore. You're just a person who does things for other people. That's your worth.
Unfortunately, that's how it is in many societies now, that you know, women are objects, subservient roles. So it's very sad. It's very sad that, you know, domestic violence, sometimes the people who actually should be speaking out against it, you will find that other women would then be supporting the men. And it's very sad. You know, they'll say, you know, you should know your role. You should know your place in the home. You don't speak out against violence. You don't speak out against rape. You don't speak out against physical abuse or mental abuse. And unfortunately, many women just, you know, accept all these violence, you know, in their lives and feel that since the society or the culture or what we call the culture of that society dictates that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, I better accept it. But there's no table, whether it's based on culture or policies or individual behavior. I see, I don't know if is your name Gonka? Gonka or Goncha? You have your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to add.
I cannot hear you and you're not muted. I can see you. No, I can't hear you. So yes, now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Something with my headphones. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So I wanted to add with Hanifa.
Oh, introduce yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Gonja. I'm from Turkey, and yes, I'm a student at BMCC as well. And so yes, I wanted to add with Hanifa's comment. Unfortunately, even like we all uh, trying to be accepted by society or trying to be seen as a woman, but there are still stories, like really upsetting stories. I should say my country, you know, even the people, like I know a very sad story. The guy was like beating his wife on the street. Another guy helped her. Now helper is in jail and the husband is out, the woman is dead, and
Wow.
government is not doing anything. You know, like sometimes it's really scary to help also. Like you will be in jail. I mean, the guy is like proud, like he helped, even though the lady is dead. But you know what I'm saying, you know? And unfortunately, government is not helping because of the culture that we've been talking about. Yes, in my culture, women just, you know, stop, obey the husband, agree whatever he says. But this should change. We've been talking for many years, but it's not changing. I don't know when it will change, but hopefully someday for our kids. And you know, but it's really, really upsetting and aggravating. Like, how come this is happening, you know? Like we are in the 21st century, people
Yes.
going to Mars, or you know, this can't be happening. I don't know.
Thank you so much, Gonja. It's very sad. That is the state of the status of women in many, 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 many societies. And it's so unfortunate that even with current day policies that support women, all these, you know, activities still take place, gender-based violence, you know, keeping women at the back burner, and, you know, as expecting that they will accept a lot of, you know, to expect a lot of beatings or, you know, to be killed. In some countries, they even have honor killings. Like if the woman is not respecting her husband or what they call respect, you know, they could say she was cheating, or, you know, she went out of the house without permission. That means she went to sleep with somebody else, or she's having an affair. And even the family would bring, you know, they will stone the person to death, you know. So these are a lot of you know, events around the world that should not be taking place. That's why I also support many of the traditional you know, policies, a lot of indigenous activities in where women were respected. You know, they were you know, carried that high esteem. Even women who knew that their places were within the household, they were given power because the women know that I'm in charge. You know, it's not like this is what you have to do. You have to cook, clean, do all this. But, you know, when you tell them you're in charge of maintaining the household, they feel very big. Wow, I'm in charge of, you know, social activities, of feeding people, of making sure people are healthy, or making, you know, making sure the place is clean, making sure that, you know, the children are fed. People in the community, you know, we work together to gather food and plant food and, you know, sell you know, our wares or, you know, artifacts or something like that. They feel very empowered because you give them the authority. But nowadays, you know, you tell women, okay, you should just cook, clean. I don't know if it's the way that some cultures say that, or maybe it has to be written somehow or expressed somehow. But definitely, even in Nigeria today, there's so many places where women are mistreated in the name of culture. Not the traditional indigenous culture before pre-colonial Nigeria, but culture of carrying colonial policies over into modern day. And let's see, does anyone else have anything to add? Abbas? Abbas?
Yes.
Yes, Abbas.
How are you doing, Professor?
Very good. This is one of my very good students at BMCC, History of African Civilizations class. Let everyone see you, Abbas.
Okay.
Let's hear from the male perspective.
I mean,
From
I
Senegalese perspective, male perspective, or American perspective, because you're both, so you can share both worlds and your views with us.
I completely agree with, women should be treated, equally. I completely agree that, like women's rights is definitely important. Like with the young lady that just said earlier, like it's crazy how in India people are getting their hijabs pulling off and stuff like that. Like I feel like women should be treated equally to men. Like it's like the other lady said. Um, we all came from a woman. We all came from a woman, and like it's not good how people treat people like they're better, because I don't want to push my religion on anybody, but we all go back to the creator, and like he created us. Like the only person that's better than us is the creator. So I just feel like we should just treat everybody equally, and I feel like the world would be a better place.
Thank you so much. I see Dr. Victoria Alapo has posted something in the chat. Would you like to speak about that or expand on the discussion?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm Victoria Alapo. I'm actually a professor at the Metropolitan Community College in Omaha, Nebraska. And I'm your professor's sister. And so that's why that's why we have the same last
name.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Alapo as well. And well, I wanted to add, like I did in the chat, that listening to your professors, explanations of what used to happen in pre-colonial Africa versus after colonialism, I truly agree, totally agree. In fact, that's why I made mention in the chat that in pre-colonial times, being a homemaker was a thing of pride. Women were basically the columns that held society up. If you think of architecture in a building, you have columns that hold up a building. And so women saw their roles in society as prideful things to be, to have pride in. Raising children who will become the next king or the next merchant or the next whatever it is their role was in society. You raised that child, and so there was always a pride in motherhood, back in pre-colonial Africa, taking care of the home, the house. Now, having said that, many women in pre-colonial Africa were not just homemakers. However, they actually worked outside of the home. A lot of them were farmers. A lot of them actually were traders who sold goods in the marketplaces. And so they actually had double roles. However, as Professor Iremi has just said, Alapo, is that when the Europeans came to Africa, not just Nigeria, to the continent in general, they destabilized whatever cultural norms had existed in the continent. And then instead of women being seen as the columns that held up society, now they were relegated to subservient roles, where the previous job that would have given you joy, cleaning the house, raising the children, doing some. Now they're making it sound like it's slavery. And the way the men, even African men, started to behave, they started to actually, follow the colonial master's way of thinking. And so instead of respectfully treating his wife now, he's now telling her, well, go clean up. That's, I mean, the tone of voice, it's almost like you're a slave now. And so the pride went out of the job. And so the job remained the same, but the pride went out of it because everybody's outlook of the job has now changed. So that's something we need to change in modern society. And thankfully, I believe it's starting to change again, where homemakers, women in general, not just people who stay at home with kids, but actually women in general are now being respected more. But I totally agree with a lot of the ladies here on the panel who have mentioned that in places like Turkey and India and so on and so forth, Pakistan, and around the world, women's rights are still not as respected as it should be. And I'm hoping with time, but again, I agree with is it Gonka who spoke earlier? They've had enough time. They've had plenty of time. They've had hundreds of years. That's a lot of time. So it's about time right now. Change needs to happen. So I think it begins with education. I'm just going to say, being an educator myself, I think that's where it starts. I think when we take classes, I remember, is it Halifa? You mentioned in the post that these are things that need to be taught in elementary school, not all the way, wait till college when they're already grown and, messed up. You have to do it when they're really young, like little, like when they're still being formed and their brains and their minds and their outlook on life is still new. You have to tell boys and girls that your roles are important. Don't make boys feel they're more important than girls or vice versa, but tell everybody they have self-worth. They're both important. Whatever their roles are wonderful, and you can do whatever you can do, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to teach this very early. So I think it falls on our educational system, which then goes back to the government, the curriculum. We need to develop curriculum or curricula, that actually, embraces that what we want as, women. We want to make sure the curriculum shows that women do have work, and that has to be taught way early. I'm talking elementary school. It's not something that we have to wait to do a women's program about in college. By this time, people are already adults. They've already formed their opinions. They're already damaged. I mean, I'm saying we're basically just trying to correct damaged goods at this point, so we need to do it earlier than we've been doing this. So again, that falls back to the elementary school. I'm not sure how we're going to, maybe we need to have more integrative meetings among ourselves as educators to say we need to incorporate this into our curriculum way earlier than we have been doing. Thank you so much. Sorry that I went on, but sorry.
Oh, no,
Thank
it's
you.
okay. It's always good to share and to learn. So thank you so much, Professor Victoria Alapo, for sharing. And I want to thank you again, because part of what she even said now, I did put it in the book when I was conducting my research, because I did survey her. So for those just joining, I read chapter 2 section on the historical perspective of women and leadership in Nigeria from this publication, Generation X, the role of culture on the leadership styles of women in leadership position. And what we've been doing is just speaking from our cross cultures or cross-cultural perspectives on the role or expectation or the value of women in the society. And we've heard from a couple of people. And now, Khalifa, I see your hand up. Was that from before, or you want to add to the discussion again?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
So it's pretty much about what everyone, including myself, was saying. It made me think of a part of a piece that I read in the Red Stockings Manifesto, where it says, we live so intimately with our oppressors that we lose sight of our political condition. And I think that is 1000% true. I mean, my mother still lives with her oppressor. And because she never had this education, and she doesn't know that she deserves more, better, she still lives there and she doesn't know how to get out of it. And I grew up with that oppressor as well, where we fought every night, physically, fist fights, etc. And yes, it's so important for like all over the world to get this education all over the world. And I know where my mother grew up in Guyana, this was still is not an option, like women and gender studies, any kind of women's studies, not an option. She also didn't have the opportunity. Women were not allowed to go to college, where my mom grew up. And it just made me think of that piece, that part that I read, where we live so intimately with our oppressors. And I was lucky that I was able to see a little differently. I mean, I was born and raised here, and of course that gave me a little more, that I got. Of course, I know that I have more rights because of that, because I grew up over here rather than say Guyana, because I've seen my family, and they also are that this way, where they all live so intimately with their oppressors, and majority of my family live with their oppressors, and they don't know how to get out of it. And yeah, it gets ingrained in our minds, in any woman's mind. It gets ingrained that you don't deserve better, or this is what you deserve, or yeah, maybe I didn't cook dinner, and my father, he's the kind of person that would get angry because he believes she should do all of the work in the house and he doesn't have to do anything, and it's just a horrible person, just a really bad person. And yeah, it just made me think of that, and I wanted to talk about that piece a little bit and my thoughts and feelings about it.
Thank you so much, Khalifa, for sharing that. I also see Gonja has posted something in the chat. Would you like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, as I posted in the chat, it's just sad, I mean, I stopped blaming him because this is what he learned from his parents. Sorry about that. This is what he learned. So it's kind of, hard to blame people because that's the culture, I mean, when he goes to our village, my grandma would say, oh, she's married, it's time to have kids now, come on. But I'm 30, there's no rush. I can have it anytime I want, with the old technology and everything, but their mind is still there, like it's impossible to change it. I remember when I was going to, school, one of my professors said, you can't fight with the people who are not educated. They will always win. So I stopped fighting with them, you guys are right. I can't say anything. You guys are right, but I'm going to do whatever I want to do because, I'm now living a free country. I can do, I can educate myself at least, Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I see Professor Anika Thrower, you have your hand up.
Yes, Professor Remy, thank you for this day you're offering. And I hope in advance I'm not speaking against the grain. I'm totally pro-woman and all the things that has to do with women. I know January 28th of sorry, I'm in my office, my phone keeps ringing. January 28th of 2013, the same year I received my PhD, I found my mother. I found my mother after 28 years. Before I even found her, I knew her story pretty much, how my dad was pretty abusive, very abusive. So she got her stuff and she left. So my father has been my mother and father for years. And I know what she said to be true because my father was abusive of women that he had after her. And I didn't know them being together when I was very young. long story. We're not here for that today. I guess, and so as women, especially a lot of times raise single women, be strong, have your own, that sort of thing right there. So we have a lot of women, as we know, because a lot of us are educated on here and aware that women by far are getting degrees beyond our male counterparts, right? Especially when we're talking about minority females. Good thing, we're taught to be, independent at the end of the day, make sure you have your own. And this is where the controversy comes in that, to me, when I think about my daughter, I think about doing better, like me doing better than my mom, and I'm wanting my daughters to stand on shoulders and do better than me, But I guess what comes into play, a lot of my counterparts, people that I talk to, intimate girlfriends or whatever the case is, some of them and us are so independent, right? We're so independent with our education, social economic status or whatever the case is. And it's like, how do we, by the same token, get this education, better our circumstances, and also leave a space for a potential mate, a man, or whatever the case is? Because if we think back in the day, partnership, having a man, that was actually our protection, right? In so many ways. So it's a balance, and it's for every individual to figure out for themselves. Like, not saying education should not be had, but also when we're talking about a protection of a potential mate. And to be clear again, and I can't be no clearer, I'm not saying we can't survive with a significant other. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, let's consider maybe the balance for that protection of different things in society. So that is my thought. And then also a phenomenon that is pretty new to me that I'm trying to explore now. This phone just rings, sorry. Is intersectionality. I'm just now getting into it. It's a phenomenon that was created by Professor Crenshaw, if I'm not mistaken. And in a nutshell, I'm going to explain it how I see it. It's especially talking about minority women. So whereas, okay, you're a minority here, you're a woman. Okay, you're a minority in different ways, to whereas you're a woman with a disability, or you're a woman of a lesbian. So it's like different intersections coming in together. And so that's where that intersectionality meets, is that discrimination, towards it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. And according to Professor Crenshaw, when we're talking about even Black Lives Matter and that sort of thing right there, almost 100% of the time, it's like it's men. Where the hell are the women at? That's why they say her name. Like, where are the women? Who's standing up for these women? So those are just some things that kind of, as you all are talking, and I came late, I apologize, I'm coming out of a class, that kind of bubbles up, as I'm listening. So I'm really, really enjoying it. So thank you for allowing me to be present.
Thank you, Professor Anika Thrower, for your contributions. That was very empowering. And I would like to share something with you. I'm going to share my screen so that we can all see the same thing together. And this is, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is from the United Nations and Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. I don't know if you can see the information on the page, but I'm going to post the link in a few minutes into the chat so that at your leisure, you can review this information and perhaps be able to use it for some of your work, because many of you have mentioned a lot of different and very interesting and empowering things today. So when we look at the statistics of violence against women, It's noted that, it persists and is unacceptably high. And, it intensified, especially during the COVID pandemic. And nearly 1 in 3 women, which is 736 million, have been subjected to physical or sexual violence at least once, since the age of 15, usually by an intimate partner. Intimate partner violence starts early among girls and women who have ever been married or had a partner. Nearly 24% of those aged 15 to 19 years have been subjected to such violence, as have 26% of those aged 20 to 24. Disparities in intimate partner violence are found across regions, which consistently is higher prevalence in low and lower middle income regions compared with high income regions. These variations are likely to reflect the challenges that women often face in living abusive relationships, such as insufficient economic resources, limited availability, and access to formal support services, weak social support networks, and fear of repercussions associated with social stigma. The current pandemic has heightened the challenges of women in abusive relationships. And if you look at the statistics, it's showing the age range and the level of increase in intimate partner violence. And we see that our girls are even, more targeted than women who are older than maybe 15 to 19 years old or something like that. And, it goes on and on saying that during the COVID pandemic, there has been high increase in child marriages because, of economic situations. Many parents were not able to work. So desperate for money, they had to marry off their little children, little girls. And the pandemic has also added to the burden of women's unpaid work. Women were not able to work outside of the home or even in the home besides household chores, and which made intimate partner violence even higher because, you see each other every day. And sometimes those in abusive relationships, they want to get away from the home. So working outside of the home or doing something outside of the home would at least keep them outside of the home for a while, a few hours before coming back. But because of the pandemic, the lockdown, you were in the same space, nowhere to escape to during the pandemic. And, I'm going to post the link. Just wanted to share that. And also, a lot of human rights abuse during the pandemic, were on the increase because, everyone was home with their abusers or those that they would like to get away from. So I'm going to stop the screen share and we can continue the discussion. I see Professor Throa, do you have your hand up again, or this was from before you spoke earlier?
It's from before when I spoke.
Oh, okay. Would anyone else like to share? I see Janelle, Isabella, Vicky. Let's hear from you. Isabella and Janella, are you in any of my classes? No? Okay. What I want to do now, since there are no other questions or comments, Isabella, you can introduce yourself and let us hear from you. You just posted in the chat.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I just came from Latinos in US Experience, so that's why I came in late. I would have come in the beginning, but I had class today.
You're welcome, no problem. Yeah, so chime into the discussion on the role of culture on women. What did you gather from the Latinos experience that you went to? Share about that with us. Did it have anything to, are there correlations in that, or were there any correlations in looking at Latino women and what others have discussed here today on the role of culture on women's leadership and how women are perceived, treated, or valued across cultures.
Well, in the beginning, like a couple of weeks ago of class, we talked about like Latinx women stereotypes. So we talked about how they're portrayed in movies and film, so to speak. And we talked about the label of that's the reason why the class is labeled like Latino or Latinx instead of Hispanic, because we basically learned about how Hispanic is essentially like a slur. And it's just been because like throughout history, it's been taken on with different connotations. And when the US Census was being made, I guess President Nixon and his colleagues decided to use the term Hispanic to basically, create like a new definition for it in terms of defining people who speak Spanish. And so instead of actually like doing any research on the term and noticing like the history of like where it comes from, so to speak, they were just like, oh, we should just call these people Hispanic and just go with it. And my professor also said like never to, like, because you want to think like they're probably ignorant to the correlations behind it, so to speak, but to just like, I just like keep in mind that like where like it's probably the opposite, just to think bad on it. And so in terms of Latinx women, and like if you're going off like the term of where Hispanic comes from, the term is set in it's like a Latin term. So that basically means the land of the rabbits. Sorry, I'm kind of like summarizing here. We have yet to give in our paper yet, so I'm like writing it currently. But
okay.
Yeah, and basically the land of like, symbolization of rabbits, so to speak, is that these people that lived in the areas that now is known as Spain were indigenous and like native women and like native people. And, with like the symbolization of like rabbits is basically like the people there are, all they do is just like have sex and they just reproduce children, so to speak. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what a nice summary. I actually, I'm sure many people have learned from your summary of the class and the content that your professor shared with you. Felicia, I see your expression.
Wow, yeah, that's super interesting.
I'm sure it's something that many of us may not have known. So this is why these forums are very important, so that we can, be outside of the classroom environment and engage in meaningful, constructive discussion to learn how women's roles or expectations are the same, are similar, or have changed over time across cultures. So, I shared from my publication, for those of you just joining us, Generation X, the role of culture and the leadership styles of women who are in leadership position. I shared about pre-colonial and colonial Nigerian women, and how, in pre-colonial Nigeria, women were highly valued across the location or what is called Nigeria today. And during colonial times, a lot of the European policies of how women were treated were implemented, and a country called Nigeria was created, merging all types of communities and societies together to now become a new nation, that had their own traditions, their indigenous way of life and cultures and policies of women's roles and expectation. And then after independence, the administrators just, the new government, they just carried these policies over, and men started feeling that, yes, women are subservient, and it's now the policy of the country, of this new independent nation, to carry over those policies and put women in their place. But after conventions like CEDAW at the UN, I believe in 1979, Convention on the Elimination of on all forms of discrimination against women, which said that, women should not be discriminated against. Many of these abuse or, looking down on women still went on in many countries. And then in 1985, we had the Beijing Platform for Action, which was, a conference of women that took place in Beijing, China. And the platform for action was, it was the time of women to put their foot down, to not be behind on the burner, to not be abused anymore. They stand up against violence. They stand up against inequality, injustice, and every activities in the society that demeaned women or relegated women to the back, or psychologically or mentally told women that this is your place. Now you have to, just be behind. And then it became culture. It became national culture. It even became family culture, because many people who grew up outside of the, pre-independence era, after independence, they just assumed, oh, it is the culture. I mean, it's a national culture, and many households, they're practicing that. So that must be the culture, and that has remained psychologically in people's heads for such a long time. But now we have, SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal 5, which by 2030, which is not far from 2022, hopefully things will change for the future generation of, our children, and even for many of us that will still be around then. So I want to open the floor back again to see if there are any comments or questions to anyone that has spoken earlier or anyone that has not spoken. I see Janella or Janelle and Vicky. Can you introduce yourselves? Are you from York or BMCC?
Hi, Professor.
Hi, Vicky.
My name is Vicky. I'm a York student.
You're in my History 108
Yes,
class?
yes, History
Oh,
108
okay,
class.
okay, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just feel like in order to reach our gender equality goal, I feel like more men needs to be supportive. I feel like we won't be able to reach it on our own, like finding amongst ourselves or for equality. I feel like more men need to support this in order to reach our goal. And also, I feel like gender inequality starts, at a young age, like with the way our parents raise us. Like parents tend to raise boys differently from the way girls are raised. Like, for example, the way they are dressed or just the way that they're treated. And I feel like that's where, it begins, gender inequality.
Thank you so much, Vicky. And this also goes back to some statistics that I found on the UN Women website, that during the COVID pandemic, even when there were opportunities for students to be online, to take courses from home, in many communities, the priority was given to male in some countries, and creating the digital divide. Girls could not access computers, they could not use the internet. They had to ration it off to boys being able to attend classes, and then girls will be, they'll just be doing some leisure activities like playing or something like that outside, or in their rooms, or being told to go read a book or do menial chores, household chores, or to get dinner ready, or wash clothes or something like that. So it's very unfortunate that I was telling a friend of mine last year that, I have my nephew and my niece. They all had computers, and this is one of the joys of being part of the New York City Board of Education or Department of Education, that each student was given a laptop to bring home, and the teachers were available to both boys and girls. But we can't say that in many other communities. Unfortunately, you're right. The mindset, the change of mindset has to come from both male and female, and we need the partnership, the role of boys and men in alleviating gender inequality. You see, there are many men who are in support and have worked alongside women. I actually can testify to that because every year for the last probably over 10 years, I have attended or be part of what is called the Commission on the Status of Women, CSW conferences at the United Nations. And many people travel from all over, many women as well as men, to table, how the UN can incorporate and make governments liable to include women in their national agenda, to change policies, to change, the ways decisions are made, the ways in which only men would make decisions and not include women, to engage both young girls and, women in collective decision making, to include boys and men, so that boys and men would know that gender inequality is not cool, to assist or enlist the services of young boys and men in respecting women, in valuing women, making it the norm rather than, what you're supposed to be doing because you're a female, making it the norm so that societal expectations or, attributes of what women are supposed to be like or do like would change. Are there any other questions or comments?
Oh, I have one.
Yes.
Yes, I was going to piggyback on what Professor Remy has just finished saying, and also on what Professor Thrower said a few minutes before, that actually we do have a lot of male supporters in this goal of women equality. And I wish Abbas was still here to hear that. That's an example right there. We had a man who was here with us a few minutes ago. And so obviously we're not saying that all men are evil or, but the fact that there are some men who still need that education, who need to be corrected. And again, it's best if it's done early while they can still be corrected. Now, I'm going back to Professor Anita's comments. I actually agree with her that in fighting for equality, we should not forget that family is also very important. So in fact, I hadn't told you that before because it hadn't come up. I'm actually married. And so I'm for women being married. In this case, you notice my name didn't change. That was a choice I made. But actually, that's up to you, of course. There's nothing wrong in keeping your name or having a different name. But what I'm saying is, I agree with Professor Anita that in becoming equal or trying to become equal, we shouldn't forget that actually there are good men out there and they will support us in whatever we decide to do. So what I'm trying to say is we just need to make sure we find those men and then have them support the goal of women equality because they do exist. So that's what I wanted to say, that we shouldn't throw away the goal of having families if that's what you really truly want to do, because there's nothing wrong in having families. It just has to be balanced with the equality that we're asking for. So I'm agreeing with Gonka. Is it Gonja? Gonka said she was being pressured. Okay, she was being pressured to have kids to get married too soon. And I agree with her. There's no reason for a woman to feel pressured in her 30s. I mean, you're just, in my mind, I think that's still a young person, And so, yes, there's no reason why you should feel that way. On the other hand, I don't want any woman on this panel also feeling that in order to be a woman, you don't need a man. You see what I mean? Okay, let me phrase that a different way. you don't need a man to be what you need to be. What I mean is, I don't want you to feel being equal means you have to be single. You see what I'm saying? That's what I meant. Okay. So I'm not saying, oh, well, because you're a women's rights advocate, well, that means we can't do anything with guys and we can't get married. No, that's actually nonsense. However, you need to make sure when that's going forward in that relationship, and you need to put your foot down and establish your equality. And I'm not saying by fighting, no. You just need to let people know that they can't walk all over you, and just let it be known that you won't take certain things. And if that person is not the kind of person who wants to be equal, then that's not your person. I mean, you're too educated to be stepped on. Come on. All right. So what I'm saying is, don't give up the goal of having family just because you're a woman's rights advocate. That's what I meant to say. On the other hand, while doing that, make sure it's somebody who agrees with what you're doing, so that way you're not always fighting over it. Okay. All right. So there are men who are wonderful men who will support what we're doing. So I just wanted to agree with Dr. Thrower that we should put that balance in our life. Everything is a balance in life. Everything is a balance. And that's what we're trying to do. And so basically what we're doing today is we're rebuking the men who have caused an imbalance, because that imbalance actually came from the guys. I'm just saying. And unfortunately, they caused women to become unbalanced as a result of their imbalance. And so now we're trying to get that back, the balance. It needs to be there. So either one is not wrong. It just needs to be balanced out. Okay. All right. That's all I had to say. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Professor Victoria.
Sometimes saying it.
As I mentioned, I've been part of the NGO CSW Commission on the Status of Women for over 10 years. And, there are a lot of forums where men and boys, are the topic of discussion on, the ways in which they have empowered women and continuously strive to make sure or ensure that their own daughters, their sisters, their intimate partners or friends, are balanced, like you mentioned, Professor Alapo. So it's very important when we're talking of gender parity or gender equality to include the role of men and boys, of course, in the positive limelight. So maybe I need to correct what if you mistook it earlier, when I said the role of men and boys. Of course, women, there's inequality because of the imbalance that many men have created with policies and decision-making processes, and the way in which women are treated unequally in various spheres of society. But at the same time, we also need to look at the role of men and boys and how to ameliorate these activities or actions or imbalance. So yes, I see Goncha, you have your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to add, yes, there are a lot of good men out there, who's really sportive. I wasn't lucky about family, but I was lucky to have a really, sportive husband, which, now he's supporting me in every way. Like we can do it if we really, I've been through lots of bad relationships. Like we have to see, like what we want. Do we want this like that bad person in our life for the rest of our life, or do we want something changed? Do we want to be happy? I always tell my like younger friends, like, please do not find someone who is making you feel bad. Find someone who puts you like you're like a princess. This is really important, and this will like go to my kids, like to their kids. It will go like that. Yes, we weren't lucky about the family, but I changed my luck. Thank God. But it can be if if you really want it. It's not just about the luck, it's our choices. If you if you do a good choice, you will end up with a good person. I'm not saying men's are bad. No, of course. There are great people out there who supports their woman. you know. So yeah, I agree with Victoria, Dr. Victoria Lepa as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm very happy that you're able to find the balance. So, you know, the 50%, you know, now is you're in a good relationship and, you know, you're very happy and, you know, have somebody to support you in your journey. So, which is very, very important. So sometimes the beginning may not be as important as the end result. And unfortunately for some women, the beginning can have adverse effect for the rest of their lives. But I'm very happy for you that, you know, you're able to find that joy, that support, and, you know, the balance today. Thank you so much, Gunter. And I have Virginie, one of my students from BMCC. Go ahead, Virginie.
I'm sorry, I know I'm a little bit late. But
It's okay.
I just
You're
had
welcome. You know, glad you came. Oh, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Can you
now
hear me
we
now?
can.
I had a little insight, and I feel like as women, just referring back.
You're muted.
Ganka, is it how you pronounce it, Ganka?
Gonja, yes. Hi.
Gonja.
I was just trying to connect with, like, as women, I feel like as empowered as we are, we have to take accountability over our choices and choosing the right people. And that's how we can uplift, like, you know, the feminist movement by taking accountability too. It's not always like, you know, the men are not doing the right thing. We have to take the accountability to uplift ourselves so we can make the best choices for our community too.
Thank you so much. Love yourself
And
first.
ourselves, right?
Yeah. You know,
More than
women take
anything.
on a lot of burden, you
Right.
know, and they take care of everybody first. Oh, I have to do this. I have to do that. If I don't do this, then maybe I'm not woman enough. Maybe I'm not gonna be liked. Maybe it's not the culture. So I have to stick with what the current culture says, or, you know, my prescribed or assigned roles, or how I'm viewed. And before we know it, we begin to fail ourselves in our minds and we're not happy. But, you know, most women will say, oh, I'm only there for my children. I'm doing this for my children, and they're not happy. But you have to be happy if you want to take care of everybody. That's why I always support the traditional role, you know, indigenous role of women in many societies. Even if they were home the entire time, the entire day, they were given the authority to lead, you know, their homes, you know, the authority to lead communities. And that made them, you know, powerful. You know, they could walk around all day feeling useful, feeling appreciated, not something that you have to do because you are a woman, you know. So thank you so much, Virginie. I would like to call on Professor Anika Thrower to give us some closing remarks because she has to leave, and then we're going to continue. Professor Anika Thrower and I are part of the Borough of Manhattan Community College 2022 Women HERStory Committee. And she's one of the co-chairs, and she has some few remarks that she would like to make. Professor Anika Thrower, you have the floor. Professor Anika? Okay, we'll come back to her. Maybe she went, she may be on the phone or something. So whenever she's here, I know she has to leave at 12:30 and she wanted to speak to everyone. Okay, there you are. Oh, we can't hear you.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, yes.
Did you have a question? I'm sorry, I was.
No, I wanted you, you know, I just introduced you as being part of the Women HERStory Committee, and you're one of the co-chair for 2022 at BMCC. And I wanted you to give some remarks on this program before we continue, because I know you had to leave at 12:30.
Okay, thank you so very much. I'm trying to multitask here. First of all, I definitely want to say thank you, Professor Remy, for all that you do. I know you have a couple events going on this month, so I know you're very busy. So I definitely want to Want to thank you for the hard work that you're putting in to make sure the BMCC community is very much abreast of women topics and issues and that sort of thing. So kudos to you. I know you put in work in the fall as well as the spring. And I just wanted to encourage everyone, there's a lot of good happenings when it comes to the BMCC's Women's HERStory Month event. It actually is this month with a couple events in the month of April as well. The very next event, if I'm not mistaken, which I can put it in the chat for anyone who's interested, will be an event at 1 o'clock, which it highlights stress management while traveling, right? We're getting out of the COVID piece for those who are traveling. I have someone who has actually lived in several countries who will it'll be via Zoom. So I can go here before I leave. I can put that link, and then also I can go here and put the link if that's okay, for all the events for Women's HERStory Month. But the link that I'll give for 1 o'clock, if anyone's interested, all you have to do is click on that link or find it in the overall that I'll offer, and you're in. So I just want to thank you once again, Professor Remy. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Anika Throa. It was good planning together since December or November, all the activities for the Women HERStory Month at BMCC. And before you leave, I wanted to thank the Women's Resource Center at the Borough of Manhattan Community College for sponsoring this event, and also my department, Center for Ethnicity and Race Studies, Professor Patricia Matthews, the chair, and Ms. Anna Daniels, our department administrative assistant, for sending all the information out. And for those of you who are just joining us, there's a link in the chat for attendance. So this event qualifies for the co-curricular transcript extracurricular credit that you will be receiving if you're a student at BMCC. If you attend 2 events, today this event qualifies as one, and next Friday I have another one on from the pandemic to wellness and spirituality and self-love. It's going to be at the same time. The Zoom link is going to be different, and in the chat I've posted the link for the entire calendar month of March as well as part of April in the chat. So if you want to attend any Women Resource Center events, you're welcome to check the link out. Don't forget to put your name, your email, and affiliation in the the attendance link as well. Okay, and I want to thank my students from my History of African Civilizations class, AFN 121, at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, and also my students from York College, from the World History class, HIST 108. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone that has participated and contributed to the discussion today on the role of culture on women's leadership. For those of you who came in late, this was the book Generation X, The Role of Culture on the Leadership Styles of Women in Leadership Position, that I read from chapter 2 on pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial Nigerian women. So what I'm gonna do as our finale is to show you a short video. I'm not gonna play the entire thing, so I'll be skipping in between, but it's by a Nigerian author called Chimamanda Adichie. Chimamanda Adichie, how many people have heard of her? Okay, so she has a TEDx talk on the danger of the single story. So the single story of the role of women, the single story on culture and women and how they are treated. So I'm going to play some sections of it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
And I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. I was also an early writer. And when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustrations that my poor mother was obligated to read, I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow. They ate apples. And they talked a lot about the weather, how lovely it was that the sun had come out. Now, this despite the fact that I lived in Nigeria. I had never been outside Nigeria. We didn't have snow. We ate mangoes, and we never talked about the weather because there was no need to. My characters also drank a lot of ginger beer because the characters in the British books I read drank ginger beer. Never mind that I had no idea what ginger beer was. And for many years afterwards, I would have a desperate desire to taste ginger beer. But that is another story. What this demonstrates, I think, is how impressionable and vulnerable we are in the face of a story, particularly as children. Because all I had read were books in which characters were foreign, I had become convinced that books, by their very nature, had to have foreigners in them and had to be about things with which I could not personally identify. Now, things changed when I discovered African books. There weren't many of them available, and they weren't quite as easy to find as the foreign books, but because of writers like Chinua Achebe and Kamara Laye, I went through a mental shift in my perception of literature. I realized that people like me, girls with skin the color of chocolate, whose kinky hair could not form ponytails, could also exist in literature. I started to write about things I recognized. Now, I loved those American and British books I read. They stirred my imagination. They opened up new worlds for me. But the unintended consequence was that I did not know that people like me could exist in literature. So what the discovery of African writers did for me was this. It saved me from having a single story of what books are. I come from a conventional middle-class Nigerian family. My father was a professor. My mother was an administrator. And so we had, as was the norm, live-in domestic help who would often come from nearby rural villages. So the year I turned 8, we got a new houseboy. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. My mother sent yams and rice and our old clothes to his family. And when I didn't finish my dinner, my mother would say, "Finish your food. Don't you know people like Fide's family have nothing?" So I felt enormous pity for Fide's family. Then one Saturday, we went to his village to visit. And his mother showed us a beautifully patterned basket made of dyed raffia that his brother had made. I was startled. It had not occurred to me that anybody in his family could actually make something. All I had heard about them was how poor they were, so that it had become impossible for me to see them as anything else but poor. Their poverty was my single story of them. Years later, I thought about this when I left Nigeria to go to university in the United States. I was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She assumed that I did not know how to use a stove. What struck me was this. She had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position toward me, as an African, was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human equals. I must say that before I went to the US, I didn't consciously identify as African. But in the US, whenever Africa came up, people turned to me, never mind that I knew nothing about places like Namibia. But I did come to embrace this new identity, and in many ways, I think of myself now as African, although I still get quite irritable when Africa is referred to as a country, the most recent example being my otherwise wonderful flight from Lagos 2 days ago, in which there was an announcement on the Virgin flight about their charity walk in India, Africa, and other countries. So after I had spent some years in the US as an African, I began to understand my roommate's response to me. If I had not grown up in Nigeria, and if all I knew about Africa were from popular images, I too would think that Africa was a place of beautiful landscapes, beautiful animals, and incomprehensible people fighting senseless wars, dying of poverty and AIDS, unable to speak for themselves, and waiting to be saved by a kind white foreigner. I would see Africans in the same way that I, as a child, had seen Fide's family. This single story of Africa ultimately comes, I think, from Western literature. Now, here's a quote from the writing of a London merchant called John Locke, who sailed to West Africa in 1561 and kept a fascinating account of his voyage. After referring to the Black Africans as beasts who have no houses, he writes, "They are also people without heads, having their mouths and eyes in their breasts." Now, I've laughed every time I've read this, and one must admire the imagination of John Locke. But what is important about his writing is that it represents the beginning of a tradition of telling African stories in the West, a tradition of sub-Saharan Africa as a place of negatives, of difference, of darkness, of people who, in the words of the wonderful poet Rudyard Kipling, are half devil, half child. And so I began to realize that my American roommate must have, throughout her life, seen and heard different versions of this single story. As had a professor who once told me that my novel was not authentically African. Now, I was quite willing to contend that there were a number of things wrong with the novel, that it had failed in a number of places, but I had not quite imagined that it had failed at achieving something called African authenticity. In fact, I did not know what African authenticity was. The professor told me that my characters were too much like him, an educated and middle-class man. My characters drove cars. They were not starving. Therefore, they were not authentically African. But I must quickly add that I, too, am just as guilty on the question of the single story. A few years ago, I visited Mexico from the US. The political climate in the US at the time was tense, and there were debates going on about immigration. And, as often happens in America, immigration became synonymous with Mexicans. There were endless stories of Mexicans as people who were fleecing the healthcare system, sneaking across the border, being arrested at the border, that sort of thing. I remember walking around on my first day in Guadalajara, watching the people going to work, rolling up tortillas in the marketplace, smoking, laughing. I remember first feeling slight surprise, and then I was overwhelmed with shame. I realized that I had been so immersed in the media coverage of Mexicans that they had become one thing in my mind, the abject immigrant. I had bought into the single story of Mexicans, and I could not have been more ashamed of myself. So that is how to create a single story. Show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become.
So that was excerpt from Chimamanda Adichie's TEDx talk on the single story. I know from the beginning of this event, we've been talking of the role of culture on women's leadership, looking at the theme of the Women's HERStory Month, a woman just like me. And I know many of us at one point in time have fallen into the narrative of the single story where, a community, a country, a race, or even by gender were considered as, are considered, let me not, use personal attributes here, but, women or a country or a race, are considered less, are considered as just one thing. And people's perspective about, that country or, a race or a people or even gender are known just based on one factor, based on even sometimes the fiction that we've read about in some books that, many students, they're not culturally diverse pedagogy, because people, you don't see yourself in the story. You don't see yourself as part of the curriculum. You don't see yourself as part of the textbook. You hardly even understand what is in there, but you're fascinated sometimes by the writings, which are usually fiction, but many of us are made to believe that these are true. So I want to open the floor up for comments on Chimamanda's TEDx talk. Any comments? We have Gonja, Khalifa, Virginie, Dr. Victoria, Sheila, Felicia, Vicky, Hanifa, Isabella, Janelle, and Danya. Yes, Khalifa.
It was very powerful. I also identify with it in many ways. I was born and raised in America, and yeah, I remember when I started reading at an early age as well, and all of the books I was reading, there were no people like me. There were no people like my parents, people of color or immigrants, etc. Just didn't exist. And it took me a very long time to start learning about my own culture. It probably wasn't until maybe 5 years ago until I started to show a more of an interest about, my people, my community. And I was so shocked about how much I don't know. And I also identify with the way people look at her. I mean, I've been called exotic many times. I have been also, people have came up to me and told me in the summertime, oh, you must love this. It must remind you of home. And, just assuming that I was not born and raised here, the assumptions, I've heard them my entire life. And the way people put you in this box, they put you in this box, and I blame them for not wanting to learn more, just like I blame myself for not, showing more of an interest in my own culture at a younger age, but yeah, I know it was just really powerful. And I don't know. Oh, you sent the link. Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalifa. I've posted the YouTube TEDx talk by Chimamanda Adichie on the single story. The link is in the chat if you want to watch the rest of the video later. It's about 20 minutes. And I know many of us have fallen into this single story or narrative many, many, many times. And all of a sudden we begin to even accept it because we hear it so often. It becomes the culture of, okay, that's what I should be doing. That's what I should be thinking. That's what I should be behaving like, because if everyone is saying it, why would you want to make change or be different? But what I like about, the talk is that I think towards the end, or even, from her work, she talks about, she depicts her life story or her encounters, and she changes narratives with the way that she has, she writes her books. So I wanted to show that so that, many of us can have a discussion on the role of culture on women's leadership. You heard from, her humble beginnings of, even while growing up in Nigeria, some of the perspective that she grew up with and did not know that someone from a neighboring town or so could be different, or there were other things happening anywhere than what she read in British books. I see Felicia, your hand is up.
I believe like in another TED Talk, she even goes on to say when she studies in college that people from Nigeria, like her family from Nigeria, they automatically believed that she was rich and she was going to college and she was struggling to make it. And they automatically was like, they automatically thought she was rich, and it was just a lot she was going through. I love her.
Yeah.
She's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Any other person? I see Danya has just joined us. Danya, can you introduce yourself? All right. I see Dr. Victoria, you have your hand up.
Yes, that was an excellent movie, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
Yes, I totally agree with the Tech Talk speaker when she explained the danger of a single story. That shows that it's not only Westerners, Europeans, who are susceptible to the dangers of a single story. All of us are. And like Professor Remy said, even the TED Talk person said, well, she even had that going on when she was a little kid. You know, she believed people were a certain way, and that can happen to any one of us. And, you know, the answer to all of that is education. Really, it truly is. The more you educate yourself, the better the stories of other people become for you, because then you're well-rounded. You're not just believing maybe half of the story or one kind of story, but now because you have a well-rounded education, you actually view people the way they ought to be viewed. But that goes back to, I'm very glad she mentioned what happened with colonialists, however. The reason why racism became so intense in the West was that single story, unfortunately, where they will only portray Africa a certain way, and that's all they heard over and over and over for centuries. And before you knew it, that's what everybody believed, because not everyone had the opportunity to travel to see for themselves what was going on in the continent. Unfortunately, even today, I like the example she used, that she took a recent flight, and when they were mentioning all the work that was done, she said, oh, a lot of charity work is being done in India, in countries like India, Africa, and other countries. And that just, you know, it's so funny. What I didn't tell you all when I introduced myself today was that I'm a geography professor, and that just drives me nuts. Anytime I hear students write papers and they say the country of Africa, oh, you know, or when people say it in church, you know, you see missionaries will go abroad and they'll be giving a report, and we have a big church. I'm talking like 2,000 people. And they'll be giving reports of countries they've been, and they'll say, oh, we went to Afghanistan, oh, we went to, and then they'll mention specific countries, India, we went to Kazakhstan, blah, blah, blah. And then the next group will say, and then we went to Africa. And I'm thinking, where the heck in Africa did you go? I mean, like, everybody's mentioning specific countries they went to. They went to France and Europe, you know, and now you just said Africa. Now we don't even know where you went. You know, because in their minds, everybody just thinks Africa is one place.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we're in 2022, and the stereotype continues with educated people. And I get mad because some of these people have bachelors. They should know better. And so please, I'm asking all of us, if you ever give a report and it's a country in Africa, just mention the country. Everybody knows if you say Zimbabwe, heck, they know it's in Africa already. You don't have to say we went to Africa, because they already know Nigeria is Africa, you know? And so always mention the specific country, because otherwise you're perpetuating the stereotype that it's just one big place where everybody's the same. And it's not, you know, that's inaccurate. So sorry, I know it's a soapbox for me because I'm a geographer. It just gets on my nerves. You know, thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Victoria. And this is the danger of the single story narrative, when you know, you box an entire continent or an entire race, or, you know, gender, you know, in terms of, you know, just saying all women are this or that. And of course, you know, it's also dangerous on the part of women who, you know, blame men folk all the time. Of course, there are very many good men and boys out there who subscribe to the ideal of gender equality, or the positive role of women in the society, or looking at people based on their race or skin color. You know, when we subscribe to the single story, it's very dangerous. And I agree wholeheartedly that, or wholeheartedly rather, that education is very important. But when we're mentioning education, what type of education are we talking about? Are we talking about non-formal education or formal education? Where do we begin to balance the idea of women's place in society, women's roles in society, the expectation of women in the society, the contribution or the role of boys and men in alleviating gender inequality? What type of education do we subscribe to? Is it education in the home or in the communities, or formal education in schools? Because in schools, you're not taught about gender equality unless you're taking specific courses on women, or but I think it should start from the individual communities. I think it should start from the home, because unfortunately in many communities you're going to find that it's even women who put other women down, because they've been conditioned over time that this is the culture, and if you are a true woman, you should teach other women the same thing. And over time, everyone just subscribes to that idea. So I see, Goncha, your hand is up. Where do we begin in educating ourselves or other people?
Professor, I always like to talk about my, stories. Yes, first, women should support women. My grandma was really mean to my mom, and it ended up things really bad. And I believe it should start from the family. Like my brother was born, was like, oh, he's the prince. Who is Gonja? Gonja is, she's just a girl, I never had a right to say anything about like something happens. Like I never had a right to say, oh, I want to go to high school, but I didn't have a right. But you know what I'm saying? It's supposed to start from the family first. And then maybe your religion, even though like I was born and raised as Muslim, and I'm sure like all the other religion, everybody has a great feelings about it, I believe. And for many years it made me think like, oh, is my religion like that, doesn't like women? What was it? But that was because I was learning from people, they were shifting it. And then when I learned on my on my own, I'm like, this is not the right one. They were not teaching us. They were teaching, I mean, I'm talking about my family again. They were just teaching the way they want it. They were showing me, oh, boy is great. When you have a son, you're best, And I don't know, it just makes me so upset. But I think it just has to start from the family. We learn everything from family, right? We learn how to eat, how to behave. Like if I see like my I was so mad for so many years because of I was seeing my dad was like always mean, and but of course later on it depends on you how you educate yourself, as Dr. Victoria Lopo always saying, yes, education, 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 but it first starts with the family, I think.
Thank you so much, Gonja. I see Khalifa, your hand is up.
Yes. I hope I'm not talking too much, first of all.
It's okay. We're here to learn and share, so you're okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Gonja, that it should start at home. I was also born and raised Muslim, and there's a lot to be educated, but there's also so much that needs to be unlearned. And I think that's such a huge thing that we really have to unlearn. And like, for example, we had the young man Abasi, and I think he's a perfect example of someone that is unlearning the traditional conventional concepts of who we are, what we're supposed to be doing as women, etc. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you so much. I see Virginie, go ahead.
And just to like add on to what she's saying is just like, the woman of the house, the mom, she makes the food. She decides when the kids go to sleep. A lot of the time, you know, the parents, they make decisions together. So a lot of what we learn does come from home. So just from, I guess, from my personal experience, I come from a Haitian household who, you know, a lot of the time they prefer that you go after career-based jobs such as, like, you know, a lawyer, a doctor, a nurse. And, you know, those are great jobs to go after, but sometimes your child may be a creative. Sometimes you might have a musical child. It's just like, I feel like you just have to always be open to just be able to curate whatever your child is interested in, and still be open to like to take in what they have to offer as well. So it's like, you know, you're staying current with what the nuances, and so you may have to learn a thing or two from what you learned, but you're able to create a better future for your own family as well.
Thank you so much, Virginie. Any other comments? All right, so I've posted in the chat a link for the NGO CSW website, Commission on the Status of Women, and ways in which you can participate in the upcoming CSW 66 conference. It's absolutely free. You can register, and there's a link in the chat. You know, you can see the different parallel events that you may be able to participate in. And for the last 10 years or more, I've been attending these conferences in person, but because of the pandemic, you know, it's gonna be online. So you actually even save money. Instead of coming to New York, for those of you not in New York City, you can participate virtually and liaise with so many organizations working on the advancement of women. So many organizations working on women and decision making, putting women's agenda of issues that affect them the most at the forefront, deliberating on their current activities, and reporting back on what they've done in the last year, or how they continue to work on activities that you know, can alleviate women's you know, inequality and access to a lot of you know, things in the society, such as education, health, you know, technology, commerce, you know, so on and so forth. So I want to thank everyone for attending this event today. It meant so much to me that we had such lively discussion. Thank you for all your contributions. Again, for those of you who you know, joined us, we started with the chapter 2 of this publication, Generation X, the role of culture on the leadership styles of women in leadership positions. And I shared the discussion on, you know, pre-colonial Nigeria, colonial Nigeria, and post-colonial Nigeria, and the way that women were viewed, were portrayed in pre-colonial Nigeria, during colonial administration, and post-independent Nigeria. And we had lively conversation and contributions from everyone that was present. And I want to thank you again. Please, if you have not done so, there's a link in the chat room for attendance. For those of you at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, you're going to receive co-curricular extra credit on your transcript at the end of the semester if you attend 2 events. So next Friday, I'm going to be having another event that you're welcome to attend. And I'm posting the flyer for that in the chat. So if you attended today's event and the one for next Friday, make sure for each event you sign the, you know, sign your information in the, you know, on the attendance, so that the co-curricular transcript credit can be offered to you. And for the students at both BMCC and York College, if you attend both events, you're going to get extra credit, as I've posted on the announcement page on Blackboard. So go back on the announcement page or check your emails. I want to thank the Women's Resource Center, especially Miss Victoria and Miss Tammy, coordinators at the Women's Resource Center at Borough of Manhattan Community College, and also Professor Patricia Matthews, and everyone at my department, the Center for Ethnicity and Race Studies at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, BMCC. Thank you to all the students that joined us from my AFN 121 History of African Civilizations class at BMCC, and students from York College, the World History HIST 108 class that joined us. Thank you to Professor Anitha Throa, who is one of the co-chairs for the 2022 Women HERStory Month, to my sister, Dr. Victoria Alapo, joining us from Omaha, Nebraska, to Khalifa, to Gonja, to Isabella, Vicky, Felicia, Danya, everyone who came, Abbas, the only male who contributed to the discussion. Thank you so much. If you would like a recording, I've posted my email in the chat. You can send me an email, especially for students who need to write the reflection and send to their other professors. And if you have any questions on obtaining this publication, you can email me. I have some copies I can sign for you, or you can find them on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Before we log off, are there any last minute comments or questions or any feedback?
Oh, yes. I wanted to just thank you so much for inviting me and for having me in this panel. It was a wonderful morning and discussion, so I enjoyed attending with everyone. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Anyone else?
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Professor Victoria Alapo, Remy Alapo, all the Alapo. And please stay safe. And
Thank
hopefully
you.
see you next one. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
See you next Friday, May 11th. May 18th at 11 a.m. And the panel discussion, we're going to have about 5 professionals who will be discussing on mental health, balance, and they will be talking on from the pandemic, from the COVID pandemic to spirituality and wellness, and sharing ways in which they've been able to cope during the pandemic and sharing best practices with everyone. So please join us Friday, March 18th at 11 a.m. The link is posted on the Women's Resource Center at BMCC. If you look on the calendar and look on March 18, you'll find it there, or just email me. I will send you the Zoom link, but I've posted the flyer also in the chat for those of you who were able to get it. So thank you so much. It's been a wonderful discussion, and thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.